That's 790 miles from us.
Yeah, exactly. You sure it isn't 792?
0.3.
0.3, right.
That's if
Right
you
in the
take
hot-
exit 1.
Are you guys up over 100?
Yeah.
For the last 45 days.
For 45 days. Oh my gosh, can you imagine the heat? Dallas is, today is 100, it's going to be 108.
Where?
Out Dallas.
Dallas.
So that's about what it is.
108.
That's what it is every day in El Paso. So.
Is that what it is?
Which is our local military base down the road behind us a little ways. One of the largest employers in the city, about 8,000 personnel, both military and civilian. So we specialize in communications. Traveling back across the causeway. If you look off to the right, you'll see some channel markers, green and red buoys. Not very notable, unless you know that marks the entrance to the Rideau Canal. So, Colonel John Wagner's ordered to create an all-British waterway from Montreal to Kingston. So he had to build the Rideau Canal over 200 kilometers of swampland, with a heavy dugout entirely by hand, using shovel, pickaxe, oxen, and dynamite. It's a very expensive project. All said and done, cost the British $1 billion today's currency to build that canal. So, about 1,000 Irish immigrant workers lost their lives in the construction process. They're buried in unmarked graves. The 47 hand-operated logs were put in, are still in operation today. So it's an engineering marvel. The Rideau Canal, along with some of the fortifications in Kingston, a few years ago, were declared a World Heritage Site. It's on a pretty short list, including other great spots like the Great Wall of China, the Pyramid of Giza. Colonel By set up a small logging community near the end of the Rideau Canal. He called it By Town. It was eventually chosen by Queen Victoria to be the nation's capital, and they renamed it Ottawa. So, Fort Frontenac here on the left. Which was a French fort, but that's mostly untrue. Once the British showed up, they didn't like staying in their French buildings, so they built up their own in 1820. There's still some French influence though. Here on the right-hand side, you'll see a fractured stone wall. There it is there. That's the northwest bastion of the original French fort, dating back to 1673. Beside it, the K-Rock Center, a local sports arena and entertainment center. Home to the Kingston Frontenacs, our junior A hockey team, who play in the Ontario Hockey League. For all the hockey fans on board, it's managed by Doug Gilmore. It's coached by Todd Gill. And recently announced, our goalie coach is Curtis Joseph. So, that's 3 former Toronto Maple Leafs behind the wheel. No, it doesn't sound good. Some folks aren't big fans. So, I guess it's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on who you root for. We've got a few hockey residents as well, other than Gilmore. One of the most notable, one of the commentators from Hockey Night in Canada. Love him or leave him, of course. Grapes, Don Cherry. He's got a cottage up in Wolf Island. Very charismatic person, of course. Sometimes see him around during the summer. Kingston is also rumored to be one of the first birthplaces of hockey. Our story is the first game was played between the Queen's University and the Royal Military College Cadets. They played a game in front of City Hall using a square puck. So that's our story. A few others also boast that they're the birthplace of hockey, so no one's really winning that debate. Behind City Hall is the Springer Market Square. It's the oldest public market, one of the oldest, and still operating in Canada. Dates back to 1801. It used to go all the way down to the water. Today, it's just in front of City Hall. We have a public market every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. It's an open-air fruits, vegetables, and crafts market. And every Sunday is an antiques and flea market. Now, I don't know if anyone was in here last night. They have a giant inflatable screen to show family-friendly movies from the square on Thursday nights. Last night, they were showing Father of the Bride. Steve Martin, that's right. I imagine it was quite busy. They have been for the past few months. A number of festivities also happened in the square. We had the Buskers Rendezvous here a few weeks ago of the Limestone City Blues Festival coming up in August. We replaced the years of blues music, also to run into one of our famous residents, Dan Aykroyd. Nice to make an appearance. Now right by the doors of City Hall, Sir John Macdonald stood, and he declared Canada an independent nation. So right here on this square, July 1st, 1867, is where we celebrated our first Canada Day. Something we're quite proud of here in Kingston. Here's our customs house on the right-hand side. Second oldest one in Canada. The oldest one is in Quebec. We had to have this back in 1800 so the ships coming in. Just beside it, St. George's Cathedral. The dome on the back of this church is a miniature of St. Paul's in London, England. As well, the boys' choir here has the distinction of being the first foreign choir to sing at Westminster Abbey. Lord Sydenham was the first Governor General of British North America. He came here. The Governor General is the Queen's representative for the United Provinces of Canada at that time. We still have a Governor General today. So he was the first one, and when he came, he brought everything from England that was dear to him, for his wife and his kids, and he also brought his mistress. So he sat in the front row. The Reverend caught wind of this and decided to preach on the perils of infidelity and adultery. Lord Sydenham sitting there. So he was embarrassed. He left in the huff. He stood on the steps of the church, proclaimed, "To remind dead Bonnie will never set foot in that church again." Well, he was out hunting 2 weeks later. He fell off his horse. He sustained some injuries and he died as a result. So guess what? We carried him back into that church. He's now buried in the crypt there. He's also the only person buried there.
Be careful what you say.
Absolutely, man. Be careful which part of the city. We're traveling through Sydenham Ward, named for that same Governor General. A lot of mix of architecture, some brick Victorians, and limestone buildings approaching 200 years old. Speaking of old, here on the right-hand side is a black lamppost. It's the last gas lamp staying in Kingston. Put there in 1847, along with a whole bunch of others. We switched over to hydro in 1947, but we left that one. Still operates by gas today. We had a province-wide blackout in 2003. It's the only public light working in the city. Maybe we should have left the rest of them in. Ahead on the left-hand side is the Marine Museum of the Great Lakes in Kingston, outlining how we used to build ships here in our city. That large ship in the dry docks there is the Alexander Henry, an old Canadian Coast Guard ice-breaking ship built in Collingwood, Ontario. You can wander through and visit that as part of the exhibit. At one point, it used to be a bed and breakfast. Now it's just part of the exhibit. Bought from the government for the low price of $1 for the conditions that they maintain it and repair it. Another museum here on the left-hand side is the Pump House Steam Museum. Shows you how we used to pump the water through pipes in Kingston. One of the first cities in Canada to have that. Of course, the water wasn't treated, so when you turn on your faucet, it wasn't uncommon for a tadpole or minnow to come flying out. Of course, we don't really have that problem too much these days. A lot of interesting exhibits in there as well. If any folks remember the old Canadian TV show, The Friendly Giant, miniature train set is on display in there. As our make our way into what would have been considered the countryside back in the 1800s, on the right-hand side you'll see a statue of Sir John A. Macdonald, standing in City Park. Sir John A. Macdonald, born in Glasgow, Scotland, moved here with his family when he was 5 years old. Spent about 40 years in our area as a practicing lawyer and politician. He's in City Park, one of 173 public parks. This one has a recently added splash pad for kids. Some homes on the left. The one coming up on the left with the blue shutters is called Murney House. Captain Henry Murney lived there. He owned all this land that is now City Park. It was eventually sold. I'll mention that a little bit later on. Memorial Park here on the left-hand side. I promised you 4 Martello Towers. Well, the last one's up ahead on the left-hand side. It's called Murney Tower, named for that same captain. We can also get into this one for a small fee, see what life was like for the soldiers living there. The tower design comes from the island of Corsica in France, where the British adopted them. We're so impressed with how well they worked, but we had to have the roofs here in Canada because we have snow, which you got to keep out. In order to fire the guns up on top, though, you got to take that roof off. It's a manual process that has to be done by hand. Taking up each plank of wood, it takes 24 hours. So, if the Americans are going to attack, we ask for a full day's notice so we can get that roof off in time. So we're so far. Here on the right, Kingston General Hospital, a National Historic Site. It's the oldest public hospital in Canada. It dates back to 1833. It was built during a cholera epidemic by the Benevolent Women's Society. But they eventually ran out of money to operate this hospital, so from 1841 to 1844, they were forced to rent out the west wing of this hospital to the Canadian government. Canada's very first sessions of Parliament sat right there in that hospital, which means the birth of our nation was in a hospital. It's quite poetic, what you're saying. I'm sure it took a lot of labor. Or at least 9 months of hard work. Oh, you don't like my ill-conceived jokes? Oh, here on the left is a piece of art. 2 large blue arms sticking up out of the ground. It's called Time. It's a piece of art, yeah. Given to the city of Kingston on its 300th birthday from the Canadian government. Of course, they called it time. The idea was to build on 2 tectonic plates, so over the shifting of the earth, eventually those 2 arms were supposed to come together and touch. At least that was the idea. The government told us to be touching by the year 2000. It's 2011 now, they're not even close. But it's a government project, right? So you gotta remember it's a little behind schedule. Yeah. Here on the left-hand side, this building used to be a beer brewery. We used to have 7 in our city. This one used to be one of them. It's not anymore. Now look what it is now. It's just a water treatment plant. So we used to brew some fine bottles of Canadian beer behind the walls there. A water treatment plant today, all it does now is filter the water coming to Lake Ontario, which means all we can brew now is American beer. You didn't like that one? Yeah. Of course, I can only get away with that when the Americans are on board. We're traveling out here in the Western Liberties. You had to have a lot of money built your home out here, outside the dirty walls of the industrial city. A lot of beautiful waterfront estates as well. There's some coming up on the left-hand side that I'll point out to you. They're part of the regional headquarters for Corrections Canada. The building on the left with the red roof is called St. Helena. Built for Thomas Kirkpatrick, who was Kingston's first mayor, just behind these trees. Beside it, his lawyer friend in the building next to his maid. It's called Stone Gables. Has over 50 rooms in there. Those two buildings are currently used as office space for the headquarters. But they're moving them, the headquarters that is, which means those two properties are going for sale very shortly. Which means if you guys want some prime water for real estate, you're in luck. That's what they want on the market. So why Corrections Canada? Well, Kingston benefits for a few things. We have our military history, our universities, we also have penitentiaries. Jails, slammers, whatever you want to call them. 10 federal institutions in Kingston and the surrounding area. 6 still operate today, including this one here on the left, the Kingston Penitentiary, one of the oldest operating prisons in the world, dates back to 1834. Prisoners started arriving June 1st, 1835, but one of them was an 8-year-old boy, caught pickpocketing in Montreal. They threw him in here. Also put women in here for 100 years. It's now an all-male institution. 500 inmates behind the walls, 23 in complete isolation. Canadians on board recognize the name Paul Bernardo, who's behind the walls, as well as Russell Williams. Some of Canada's most notorious criminals behind the walls there, and on the left where they like to park their yachts. I guess that's what it looks like. Club Fed, right? There's actually Portsmouth Olympic Harbor. Back in 1976, the Olympics came to Montreal, but the wind conditions weren't quite what they wanted, so they brought the sailing portions here to Kingston. We had the Olympics sailing here. The only portion of those Montreal Olympics coming on time and under budget at $12.5 million. We're traveling through Portsmouth Village. This area was originally settled by United Empire Loyalists. Those were folks in the United States who were loyal to the British. So, after the American fight for independence, for the American Revolution, those who fought alongside the British were often kicked off their farmlands, forced to come here to Canada, granted crown lands here among other places. So when they settled here, they called this area Kingstown to prove to the British that they were loyal, which is where we get the name Kingston from. After them, prison guards started settling here as well, in addition to the penitentiary. They had to be close enough to hear the alarm bells in case of a riot or a breakout from the penitentiary. 26 breakouts in the life of Kingston Pen. Of course, only one in the last 50 years, and that was this morning. He's driving the trolley. Of course, he's rehabilitating nicely, so that'll make a plus. Other than him, the last breakout was in 1989. It was a bank robber named Ty Khan. He had a good escape. He memorized the rotation of the guards. He found a blind spot. Had a rope ladder to go over the east wall. He got out. They caught him 3 days later in Toronto. He died and recaptured. Olympic Harbor here on the right-hand side. You can see some of these boats ready for the poker run. Now there's a large upside-down triangular structure right by the edge of the water. It's called Tetra. That's what housed the Olympic flame back in 1976. They also awarded the medals out there. Now you can't visit the penitentiary anymore. They stopped giving tours in the 60s. That is to say, you can get in. I'm not sure exactly how easy they'll let you out though. So here on the left-hand side, it's the old warden's residence, built by inmates. It's now Canada's Penitentiary Museum. It's a award-winning museum, one of the most visited museums in Kingston by far. You can go in, see what life was like for an inmate back in 1934, showing you what the prison cell looked like, as well as what a prison cell looks like today. How they used to restrain the prisoners over the years, how they also tried to escape, and some weaponry that some of them made, including a crossbow made out entirely out of toothbrushes, duct tape, and elastic bands, firing arrows of Q-tips with a piece of razor blades on them. Very good little device, accurate to 40 feet. It is a free museum, and that's for a small donation at the door. They're open until around 4 o'clock today. On the left is another prison, the P4W, Prison for Women, opened in 1934. Shut down in May of 2000 because the country just ran out of bad women. Yeah. Well, actually, they had 5 more across the country. Some of them lost. Queen's University's bought the property now.